This is the story of Nebuchadnezzar, a king who learned really slowly with an ego that bruised like a peach. He was a warlord pagan king from Babylon who besieged Jerusalem. He decided to teach some of the intelligent young nobles from Jerusalem all they would need to know to better serve him. Daniel was one of them. About 2 years into his reign, Nebuchadnezzar began having disturbing dreams, visions which he didn't understand. As any good pagan would, he summoned his astrologers, magicians, sorcerers, and enchanters to help him, but rather than telling them what his dream was, he told them to tell him what his dream was. Of course they couldn't, so he gave an order to have all the wise men killed. Daniel managed to stall long enough to pray, and had a vision from God of the meaning of the dream. Explaining to the king that this was not a skill Daniel had, but only something God could do, he told the king the dream, and he interpreted it, telling Nebuchadnezzar that the dream was an image of the kings to come after him. Overjoyed by this, Nebuchadnezzar fell to his face and proclaimed that Daniel's God was truly the God of gods and the Lord of kings. Of course, this doesn't stop Nebuchadnezzar from practicing his pagan religion, but it's a start in the right direction, right? He gives Daniel a big promotion, to rule over the province of Babylon. But Daniel finds a way to stay in the king's court by promoting 3 Israelites, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to be administrators of Babylon. In no time, Nebuchadnezzar dismisses the whole Daniel's God is the real God stuff, and decides to build a 90-foot gold statue which he forces everyone to worship if they hear the slightest musical sound. If they don't, they'll be thrown into a furnace and burned alive. An astrologer, still peeved about the whole dream business, tells Nebuchadnezzar that the 3 Israelites overseeing Babylon don't pray to the statue. When confronted, they're reminded if they don't, they'll be thrown into the furnace, and all 3 agree that burned or not, they're not going to worship Nebuchadnezzar's gods, let alone a gold brick. Furious, he orders the furnace to be turned up as hot as possible and has all 3 men bound and thrown in. But rather than burning, they're perfectly safe. The ropes that bound them are now ashes. Nebuchadnezzar is absolutely amazed. He tells the men to come out of the furnace since they are servants of the Most High God. This doesn't stop Nebuchadnezzar from practicing his pagan religion either. Nebuchadnezzar has another dream, this time about a tree. Daniel tells him, begrudgingly, that the tree is him, and he's about to go insane and get kicked out of his kingdom to go live on grass with wild donkeys. You'll have it rough for a while, he says, but you'll eventually come back to power, lessons learned. 12 months later, just long enough to put a dream like that out of your mind, Nebuchadnezzar is admiring his palace.
"Look at this great palace, which I built with my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty," he says.
So with that, a messenger from God comes down and Nebuchadnezzar goes stark raving mad, gets driven out of his domain, and lives in a field eating grass. Eventually, he looks up to heaven and acknowledges that God, indeed, gives control to kingdoms to whomever he chooses. Now, uninsane, he's brought back to his palace and reseated on his throne. So now he's willing to praise God. Because the dreams, seeing the future, just missed their mark, and having everything, even your own mind, taken away seemed to finally hit home. The moral of the story? Pride seems to be a real hot button for God. Remember, nothing you've accomplished was the result of anything else but God.